Well, guess what?
Back again.
It's back
Back again.
again.
And we're back. And we're back.
They're back again.
Back again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Back Again Sequel Podcast, the only podcast that takes a sequel from the past and finds out if it was worth going back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And today we are finishing up our summer sequel blockbusters by doing the follow-up to the 1975 Jaws, and we are doing Jaws 2.
When the movie Jaws first opened, it created a sensation. And shark sightings increased by the thousands in all the vast and unknown depths of the ocean. How could there have been only one?
Jaws 2 comes out in 1978. It's written by Howard Sackler and Carl Gottlieb. It's directed by Zuno Swartz. It's starring Roy Scheider, Lorraine Gray, Murray Hamilton, and a bunch of teenagers, I guess.
And kids.
And kids. Years after shark attacks have left Amity Island reeling, Sheriff Martin Brody finds new trouble lurking in the waters. Mayor Vaughn wants to rid the beach town of the stain on its reputation, but the disappearance of a pair of divers suggests that all is not right. When Sheriff Brody voices his warnings about holding a sailing competition, everyone thinks it's post-traumatic stress. That is, until a shark fin cuts through the water. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way, because obviously we are in the 50th anniversary of the first Jaws. The Jaws in many ways is considered the first ever summer blockbuster. So to me, this is the first summer blockbuster sequel.
The first real one, yeah.
I mean, obviously for both of us, like, this was pretty hard to watch, right?
Why, though? Because that's what makes it interesting. It's not like any movie we've seen before, honestly, and I was thinking about that.
That is true. I think in a lot of ways, because we've watched so many sequels that came after this, I definitely expected this to be a certain way. I thought it was going to, like, kind of maybe do some of the tropes that we've seen on all these other sequels, but it was not what I was expecting. And frankly, I think it could have benefited from doing what maybe some of the other sequels have done later on. And I'm not talking about the Jaws sequels per se, but just other sequels to first classics, you know?
Well, that like we've done on the podcast before. Like, because they follow a lot of tropes. This one didn't really do that. I think the big trope is just constantly alluding back to the first one. It didn't really feel like this one did that.
No, which was weird.
Yeah, and the big thing I wanted to mention, when you were doing the summary, you said post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Something along those lines.
Do they ever? No character acknowledges that in the movie, do they?
Yeah, there is about maybe a handful of times that anybody even references the first one. And I actually have them written down. And like right off the bat with the opening scene, we have two divers that find the ship, the Orca, from the first one, right? After that, we have Brody calling Hooper on the telephone to try to get in contact with him after he hears about these attacks. And there's just a reference to Hooper that he's like undersea, so he's like out on a voyage or something, so he's not able to call back.
He's on a different movie.
He's on a different movie. And then the only other one that I could find was Brody saying to the mayor, I believe, I have experience when it comes to sharks.
Yeah, he says it like once. And it's insane to me because the whole time, I don't know. One could make the argument that, because like you kind of said in the summary, they're kind of like trying to repress that. Like, oh, that was a terrible memory. We don't want to remember it. But it's just like the way they treat Brody, it is bizarre. It's almost like he's in a nightmare, and this is like an avant-garde film, and this is him like having a post-traumatic stress dream. And it's like, how is no one remembering? It's like everyone forgot. Because no one's saying, oh, you have PTSD and you're overreacting. No one's giving excuses, really. They're just acting exactly like it's the first movie again, where they are just flat out refusing to accept it. To the point where he has a photograph, and they're like, oh, we don't know what this could be anything.
Seaweed?
And it's bizarre when it comes down to it.
It sucks because I was really looking forward to seeing what that photograph looked like because of the fact that it's in the opening scene of the movie and you expect it to be this like terrifying shot. And like you said, like 3 out of the 5 people are like, I don't see anything.
The audience is kind of like, can't really see anything either. Like, it would be one thing if it was like an actual, like, oh, there is the shark, but he is pointing at it and he's like, he looks like a madman, like he has PTSD. So it's like, I don't know. The director might have been trying to do something where it's like an allegory for PTSD, but it is all over the place. It's barely acknowledged. That was one of the big problems I had with this movie, was that bizarre refusal to acknowledge most of what happened in the first movie.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why they kind of don't know what to do with that idea is because they don't really state how many years have passed since the first Jaws, right? Like there is one line that I found, and it's after Brody gets fired and he's sitting on the couch with his wife, and he says something like,
4 years down the drain.
so in the first Jaws, that's like the first, he just moved to Amity Island, right? Like with his family. So I guess 4 years have passed since the events of the first Jaws. But like you said, no one seems to really care or acknowledge how much time has passed, and more so than that, how everybody's been doing since that first initial attack, and also since, I mean, Chief Brody went out to sea with 3 people, one of them died, and he blew up the shark in the water. Like, you would think that back on land, he would be treated like a hero, maybe he would have PTSD.
Because the town is thriving. The town's been thriving for 4 years because he stopped Jaws.
Exactly.
And it'd be one thing if like they're like, oh, we still don't believe you because it got blown up and there's no proof or whatever, but not even that's brought up. It seems like everyone despises him for being a hero for no reason.
It seems like they don't truly remember that. Like,
Or they have
it's
amnesia,
like,
yeah.
They have amnesia, like there was a gas leak in the town and nobody seems to remember it, because even like what you were talking about with the PTSD and like, let's just say the paranoia, that's not even brought up until it's convenient to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the beginning of the movie, Brody's just like doing well, I guess. And like, you know, it's another day in the life. There hasn't been really anything that like, he doesn't go on any journey in this movie.
It's true. Yeah. The PTSD doesn't show up until the shark does. It's not like he's, you know, having nightmares and then as like a premonition and then the shark shows up. It's the shark shows up and then the memories come back. Now, do they real quick, do they try to do like, is the sharks related to Jaws in some way? And I missed that. Or is it just some random shark attack again?
Well, that's what's funny is that there is a moment on the beach after the orca attack. And Brody is talking to another kind of like marine biologist specialist on the beach. And he's very concerned about the bite marks. And she's saying, well, it could be a whale, it could be this or that. And then he starts bringing up like it could be sharks and stuff, and how he is wondering if sharks are able to like communicate the same way that dolphins do. And I believe it is the specialist where she looks back at him and she says,
Sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody.
which is so funny because I believe, and I haven't seen Jaws 3 or 4, but I believe that is one of like the plot points in Jaws 4, which is a shark travels from Amity to another location to antagonize Brody's wife and children.
I believe that's correct.
It came for him.
What?
It waited all this time and it came for him.
Here's what I want to throw out there, because keep in mind, let's go with this idea that this shark is getting revenge, even though they already do that later, like I said. Mm-hmm. The shark kills an orca. The name of the ship from the first movie that we see at the beginning of this movie is the Orca. Do you think subconsciously this shark was sending a message to Brody?
That's stupid.
What am I, an ass?
I don't know. I feel like the director or the writers were thinking like this is clever, but it makes no logical sense. Now, it is interesting where it's like, oh, it's attacking other predators because orcas, killer whales are like predators. But yeah, when you're making that allusion to it's like, oh, the boat was also named the Orca, it's like, come on.
But you know what? It's like, if you're going to have a line like that where Brody's asking, like, do sharks, like, remember or communicate with each other? That kind of lines up with the PTSD and the paranoia that we're talking about. So, honestly, one thing they could have just, like, borrowed, or I guess one thing they could have really used in this movie is just start the sequel with the fact that Brody is still paranoid about the water and that people are like, listen, man, it's been 4 years. Like, you did it. You're a hero. We love you in this town. You don't need to be so paranoid anymore. anymore, but he's just like hellbent on this idea that another shark is coming. And then that way your inciting incident is Brody getting fired instead of Brody getting fired at the hour mark.
Okay, yeah.
Because if Brody gets fired at the inciting incident, then at least from there, he's on his own. And then when shark attacks start happening, you could either do a thing where they have to like go back to him for his help and be like, we were wrong, or he just goes rogue and he's like, I'm going to do this on my own, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing is the writers, I feel like, don't understand Brody as a character. They only understand him as a police officer. So it's like, no, their rationalization is no, the dark moment has to be him getting fired because he's a police officer and nothing else. Whereas, you know, someone a little bit more clever or someone with a little bit more time would be like, no, he gets fired at the inciting incident and then he has a personal conflict that comes at the dark moment. Something with his family who, God, like, I don't even remember their names. They're so like, they're such straw characters.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if they're not going to focus really on Brody because, like you said, they don't know how to write him and they're not going to fire him until the hour mark, then the question is, which is a question we've asked so many times, what are we going to do until then?
We do nothing for that first hour.
What we do is we meet a bunch of teenagers. That's what we do.
And then,
and I got to be honest with you, like I was so bored by every teenager interaction and every sailing
montage. They would just have sailing montages for like in the middle of the movie. Like, oh, all right.
These kids love to sail. And even I remember someone saying, like, you're going sailing again? And I think it's Brody's wife that's like, what else is there to do, like, on the island? Like, you know? But truly, like, it fills up the whole time. And I got to be honest with you, there was so many times where I could not keep track of which teen was which teen and whose son was which son, because we have Brody's two sons. We have the mayor's son. We have this like teen model that was like cutting a ribbon at the beginning of like a ceremony. And she's the one that's on that, like, I guess you could call it famous boat attack where her boyfriend gets killed by the shark. And then he like drives him like into the boat and then she's like hiding on the boat later when Brody finds her.
Yeah.
But then we also have this like, I guess what you would call him is the comic relief, the friend of Brody's son, who's like the kind of heavier kid that he feels like he's from a Friday the 13th movie.
You have the self-deprecating nerd who just has no self-esteem.
Yeah.
Who just like to the point where the girl is like, yeah, I'll go with you. He's like, what?
But was that even the same girl that he wanted from that first like
he's a virgin. He'll take anything. And they're all like attractive, like, what do you call them? Not like beach babes, but like bayou babes, not bayou, whatever you call that.
Sure.
The whatever. So yeah, but yeah, like I couldn't name one of them. You would think that the mayor's son would be more of like a villain, but I don't remember any like none of the kids had real personalities. They were all just trying to get with each other.
But I couldn't remember honestly what the mayor's son looked like, and sometimes I couldn't remember what Brody's son looks like. So when we get to that final act when they're all like, you know, sailing and then all their ships get combined together and they're trying to like just survive the shark that's circling them. For the longest time, I genuinely thought Brody's oldest son was on that boat, but it's not. His youngest son is, and the older son was on a different boat that he's the one that alerts Brody that the younger brother's still out there. But for the longest time, I couldn't decipher who was who, because as you remember when Brody's youngest son like falls in the water and then that girl jumps in and saves him and then she gets eaten in front of his eyes and then he's like holding onto the fin and they're just like yelling at him for what felt like an hour of like, grab the rope and get over here. I'm gonna beat your ass if you don't grab the rope.
God damn it, son! You listen to me, I'll break your ass, do you hear?
Daddy, chill.
When he finally gets over there, the older son's friend, the comic relief one, he's like kissing him and like holding him tight. He's like, I'm so glad you're safe. And it's like, who are you?
That should be, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess they're all friends. Like, they all grew up on the island together.
Sure, but they're just forgettable. And like, I to this day, I couldn't tell you which one is the mayor's son. I thought he was one that died, but I think I was wrong because the mayor never, like, no one ever brings it up.
Yeah, no one warns. I'm pretty sure the mayor's son survives. I'm not 100%. I was honestly so distracted during the climax by that woman who was screaming like she was possessed. Like, it was like, you would think that it was like a ghost shark or something, and it was like also possessing her or something. It was insane.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Doing a little research, they definitely wanted to lean into that kind of like, I don't know, a little bit more teen thrasher element with doing the second one, because the director definitely was like very vocal about how he wanted to do something different, and he like wanted to show the shark earlier on, and he wanted to like introduce new characters, and he wanted to do more boating. Like in theory, he got everything he wanted in this movie, and it was just everybody else that was like, what?
I wonder how he got this movie.
Well, believe it or not, there was a first director that got fired after 18 weeks of shooting, and his name was John Hancock. But he got fired, and then they brought on this other guy, this Zeno Swartz, and then he finished it, and he like, I guess that he shot it like pretty fast, and yeah, they had like 3 sharks on this one, and he was like, you know, one thing we're gonna do is not only are we gonna show the shark early, but we're gonna make him scarier by giving him a big scar on his face.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
When I don't know. I don't know if this is too much of a deviation. When I was watching this movie, at a certain point toward like the beginning of Act 3, I was like, I had the realization, and I was like, this movie should have just been Brody and his oldest son stuck on a boat, and there's a shark in the water. That's it. And then you have like, you have a B plot back in town with the mom and the mayor, and they're doing something. But it's like, if you want to do something different, I would just do something like that. Because everything this director that you're saying he wanted to do, introducing all these characters, make it about boating, show the monster. I know this was like 50 years ago, but it's like, that's so counterintuitive to what should have been going on.
Yeah, well, apparently when they immediately greenlit a sequel, obviously, for Jaws 2. And one of the stories that they came up with was that they were going to do a prequel, and it was going to be about Quint and about that story that he tells about all the men during like the war being trapped in the water.
That would have been good.
So that was like a big pitch, but they eventually didn't want to do that. They were like, no, it's got to be at Amity again. We got to have like essentially the kind of the same like storyline. But what's so weird about this is that I expected them to do that more, and they didn't. And instead they almost tried to do just another Jaws without even understanding what made the first Jaws good. And I know this has been talked to death, but to me, what I think makes the first Jaws good is not only all the elements of the actual predator in the water, but it's Brody. It's Brody's storyline of being like a New York cop that comes to this island to kind of get a little peace and to get away from the crazy crime life. And then once all these attacks start happening, you know, he has to confront not only his fear of going in the water, but kind of like a new dangerous threat that, even though he has experience with threats from being from New York, he's never experienced this before. And there's an authenticity to his character caring and also overcoming his own fears living on this island. In the second one, it's like, that's the story. So what's the story in this? There's no story.
It's happening again, but he has no motivation. Piggybacking off what you were saying, I was going to mention the character relationships and like how alcohol plays into it. The way I see the relationships in the first movie is that Brody has lost camaraderie is probably the best word.
Yeah, male friends.
Male friends, yeah, because he has none in this new. He only has his family in this new lifestyle. And then the first movie is about him finding that companionship with Quint and Hooper, right? And then, you know, and then it's the famous scene where they're like drinking on the boat and they're singing and whatever. In this movie, there is no there's no male companionship. It's Brody, his family, and then everyone that he's like raging against. And they keep the alcohol in there to the point where it's sad. It's so fun in the first one where he's drinking on the ship with his friends, and now he's drinking and arguing with his wife because he got fired. And I don't know, the connection to the first movie is so obvious. And there's even a moment where he's drinking, talking to his wife, and he says like, I'm so tired. And I'm like, I wanted him to break into the song, I want to go to bed. But like, so it's like, there's that illusion where it's like, it feels like the director is aware that there is this connection, but instead of adding to Brody's story or even copying the first one, he's making him a unlikable character.
Well, yeah, it's like, it just feels like in regards to Jaws 2, the reason all these things are absent is because they don't really want like anyone from the first movie to kind of like be there. They just want to recreate something that'll make almost $500 million at the box office again. Just to get in the budget in the box office a little bit. So the first Jaws from 1975 has a budget of $9 million. And this movie domestically makes $260.7 million, and then worldwide it makes $476.5 million in 1975. So then Jaws 2, which comes out in 78, it's got a budget of $30 million, even though they didn't tell the people how much money they were spending, because they were like, listen, we'll just add it up at the end. Because like literally, like they're not going to approve this budget, so we'll just keep adding to it, and we'll just know that we're going to make it back. So it's got a budget of $30 million, and it's got a box office return of $78 million.
Worldwide?
Well, this was the initial release, okay? But then after re-releases and reissues, it eventually ended up making $208 million.
Okay.
But that's over like as years go on.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I
over
mean?
decades probably.
So in a lot of ways, this doesn't feel like that big of a success. It feels like it eventually turned into a success. But when you compare that to the first Jaws, which was like $9 million, and then you almost get to like $480 million worldwide, like that's insane.
Yeah. Is it is 2 at all considered like a cult movie or anything? Or is there any love for it?
It's gotten more love as the years have gone on, but I think that's only because of how bad Jaws 3 and 4 are.
Okay.
Like Tarantino has said in clips that I've listened to that the boat sequence where the blonde girl and her boyfriend get attacked and he like rams the body of the boyfriend into the boat. He says that sequence is good enough to be in the first Jaws.
And he has the one attack that's terrific, the one with Ann Dusenberry, where it's like the young guy and the girl and the sailboat. That attack is good enough to be in the first movie. You know, where the shark gets the guy and like heads towards the boat. That's good enough to be in the first movie. That's the one attack sequence that is good as the first film. That literally could have been in the first movie.
Oh my God. I mean, that was one of my favorite sequences, but I didn't think it was good. It's interesting doing this movie right after a movie like The Mummy Returns, because we were so harsh on The Mummy Returns for being rushed and when it didn't have to be and making dumb decisions. But now with Jaws 2, it's like at least Mummy Returns is entertaining. This is like a worst case scenario of let's rush out a sequel for a successful movie, blockbuster, and they can't do anything right. They fail everything.
Well, to be honest, I think it comes down to like the potential of the world, right? Like the Mummy has a way bigger world than the Jaws does. Like Jaws is literally a simple story about a shark in the water and people on a small town trying to stop it. And if you try to do that again, I don't think that there's any version of this movie that works besides the one that we're kind of pitching, which is more character driven and it's more about like the paranoia again. But coming out of this, people have mistakenly thought this, I think, about Jaws as years have gone on, that like Jaws is like, you know, a bloody slasher monster movie. And it's not. It's like a drama, you know? And you can't do Jaws 2 without those dramatic elements.
I think what it is it is a bloody movie for a PG movie, and that's kind of where the notoriety comes from.
Well, you know, we have some really negative things to say about this movie. Let's go ahead and look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores of this movie. So, Jaws from 1975. Surprise, surprise. It's got a critical score of 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's got an audience score of 90%. And rewatching it again, because I've seen it now probably like 4 times, besides all the times as like a child that I saw it. That movie is just really good. Like Jaws it just holds up. But then with Jaws 2, the critical score is a 57%, which feels very generous, I think.
That's very generous, yeah.
And then the audience score is 40%.
That's more accurate. There you go.
What really sucks about this, too, is I believe that this has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than The Mummy Returns, which we just talked about, too.
Oh, wow. I was just saying how The Mummy Returns is such a better sequel than this is.
I know. Well, it's like Rotten Tomatoes. We only use it on this podcast because it's just numbers to talk about. But like Rotten Tomatoes is, you know what I mean? Like they're not that credible.
Yeah.
So as always on this podcast, we have 3 questions that lead to a final decision of was it worth going back again? And the first question is, does it work as a sequel?
No, I think we opened up talking about how it fails this on like every single front, where it just ignores elements of the first movie to the point where it's frustrating. You lose your connection to Brody because you don't understand where he is in his relationship with the townspeople and the mayor, and even his own psychology, his PTSD, which he doesn't seem to have until another shark comes back. Which honestly, that's interesting. The fact that he would just stay in town knowing that he probably has PTSD. You would think that he left New York to relax, and then you have this traumatic shark attack in Jaws 1. You think he would move somewhere else to go to actually relax, but he just stays in town. Another shark attacks and they act surprised, like it's the first time this has happened. And it's like, that's unforgivable. I can't see that working as a sequel.
No, it doesn't, because there's no story that they're telling. And frankly, it might have gotten a check if they, like you said, at least addressed even more so all the events from the first one. But it's just such a weird movie, because I really was expecting it to be more of what other sequels that we've done on this podcast do, which is like, remember that from the first one, where we're going to do it again and we're going to, like, you know, try to make our characters go through the same journey, but they don't do that. Because, you know, what was annoying is, like, I really liked the fact that the movie opened up with showing the orca sank at the bottom of the ocean, but it never came back.
The opening was the strongest sequence, where you have the scuba divers, the orca ship, the shark attack. But then it's like, it's just more of the same.
So that sounds like it's going to get a pretty strong 2 X's. So the next question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining? I will start this one off. I'll make it quick. No, it's not enjoyable / entertaining. If anything, it's just so boring. We didn't even want to talk about this movie, but because of the fact that it's like I said, the first like summer sequel blockbuster, great. But no, it's not enjoyable / entertaining. And I really did not like this movie.
I don't know why I had this thought, but it would be interesting if they had, you would think at the very least they would have some kind of shark attack movie floating around Hollywood at some time during this. But no, I don't know, I guess they get too in their own head. Oh, I forgot I have to answer the thing. Yeah, no, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's like the fact that I kind of do this a lot, but it's like when I'm so bored that I'm thinking of different ways to make it more engaging, that's just a huge red flag. So no, I didn't find the plot was not engaging enough to keep my mind from wandering. I don't like what they were doing with Brody, where they weren't actively changing him back to the way he was in the first movie. They were changing him and just making him worse. And then, yeah, the big thing I kind of said too is, like, if you're going to make, it's fine if you're like, fuck everything Spielberg did, let's just do a bunch of fun shark kills. If you're going to do that, at least put in some creative energy. And it didn't really feel like they did.
No, it felt like they thought that boat exploding was going to be like the thing that really hooked people in, that was really exciting. I mean, obviously the thing that comes out of this movie is a tagline that's like one of the most famous taglines ever, which was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, which is honestly a great tagline for like a sequel. And then there's the famous shot of, like, you know, the girl skiing on the water and the big shark behind her. Like, I see that image like a lot of places.
But that shark doesn't even have a scar.
Yeah, and also the shark's not that big at all in the movie. So that sounds like it's going to get another deserved 2 X's. So the last question is going to be, does it need to exist? This is, like I said, the first summer sequel blockbuster. In a lot of ways, it probably started off the idea of, let's do that again to make money. Drew, we do the sequel podcast. Does it need to exist?
I honestly, for this one, I'm going to have to say yes, because the first one made so much money, dude. We have to do it again. We can't just let that sit.
Are you being serious right now?
Like, it's weird because I'm like, no, I don't think this movie subjectively needs to exist. But when you look at how much money the first movie made, it's like, okay, so yeah, my answer is no, it does not need to exist. But I will say with an asterisk, of course it exists.
But that's the thing. It's like, of course it exists, but like what we come here to do is to really decide, like, yeah, but is it worth it? Like, does it need to exist? Is it really worth going back again? And frankly, it always comes down to the same thing. If you're not going to put in like the actual time and energy to tell a good story, then it doesn't need to exist. And from all things that I've read about Jaws 2, it still sounds like people put in like hard work and they went in with like an actual intention and stuff. But they just didn't have good taste. Like, they just weren't good at specifically telling a continuation of the story or completely getting rid of that story and then doing something new, right? And this really just comes down to like, because there was rumors that Spielberg was going to come in at the last minute and like save this movie and like reshoot a bunch of stuff. But I think once they got Roy Scheider back on board, they were like, that's fine. We got him back. We don't need to do this. But it's like, you guys didn't do it. You didn't do it. So if you're doing that math at home, that's going to be 0 checks and 6 X's. So that's going to get 1 giant X for not worth going back again. And yeah, I don't think we've done like a true 0 checks in a while, to be honest.
We've done it before, but it's been a while, yeah.
As always, thanks everyone for listening. If you like this episode, you can listen to all episodes of the Back Again Sequel podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search Back Again Sequel podcast. Or you can watch these episodes with video on YouTube. Just subscribe to wag.productions. All right, Drew, and besides that, you got anything else to add?
Jackie, shut up! No, it's gonna Jackie, shut up! Shut up!
All right, we will see you next time.
Back, 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 back.